Okay. All right. I am Andy Christmasik, President of the Brown Historic Society Board. And welcome to the 95th annual meeting of the Brown County Historical Society. It's so good to gather with you all. It's a celebration of Brown County, a celebration of history, and a celebration of our society. So thank yous to begin. Thanks to the Turner Hall and the staff here. This place truly is a landmark. Speaking of history, it's thick in these walls. It goes back to the beginning of this town, of the city. I wanted to recognize the staff. Yeah. So thanks to Amy, Heidi, Christina, and Darla for all their efforts to pull this together. As president of the board, it warms my heart when the staff works well together. So I'm going to introduce them now, and let these people stand up. The board, we're just going to raise your hand. Amy Johnson is our executive director. Darla Gebhardt, who I think everybody knows, is our research librarian. Heidi Brandis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is our visitor services coordinator. Christina Miller-Kester is our programs coordinator. Dave Weldy does maintenance for us. And Christina Sproul is listening, cleaning maintenance too. She's here. Thank you to Garrett, who is spending more time with us than a lot here, for bringing a topic of immense interest to us tonight. Thank you to my fellow board members. I truly look forward to our time together when I'm not planting or combine corn. Vice President Ron Stafford filled in ably in those times, and I was told it not ramble on like I'm going to do. But anyway, so brief introduction of the board. Wave your hands, stand up. Ron, as I mentioned, is our vice president. He's right there. Don Wayne from Springfield Humphrey area is our secretary. Paul Pichel from Springfield, of course, is our treasurer. Larry Harbaugh from Lake Crystal is on the board. We received waivers adopted in committee. Roger Hipper, yes, okay. I was humble and sit up front. The rest of us. Dan Uni, Dan, there you are. Tom Romaine, is there. Dennis Sharp at the wall. Mike Schmidt, CBI. Joanne Schmidt with a T, CBI. And Clay Schultz from the Omaha. He may be putting together a newspaper right now. And thanks to all of you who chose to spend an evening with us when you could stay home and watch YouTube videos. There's a lot of competition for your attention, and we don't take it for granted you being here. So at your table, you should have gotten minutes from the 2024 meeting. And so look at those and entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Terry speaking, somebody else enjoying it. So all in favor of that, say aye. And now we move to the financial report. And all these shows present that.
Thank you, Randy. In your packet of information, we have a consolidated balance sheet. I'll just walk through that for you from area 2023. Return assets to cash and cash equivalents of $45,388 compared to 56,729. That's now 11,341. Our investments, we have financing bank and trust, 969,473, compared to 873,089 in 2023. It's an increase of $96,000. Our investment at solicitation, $141,049, compared to $427,509, an increase of $12,540. Our other receivables, inventory, $16,013, compared to $17,575 last year. Inventory levels are down $1,562. So total current assets, $1,471,223, compared to $1,375,202. That's an increase of $96,721. The liabilities and assets, our current liabilities, our accounts payable are down $1,575 compared to 2023. Food expenses and other liabilities are $6,698 compared to $5,436, or up $1,262. So total current liabilities $6,698 compared to $7,011, or down $332. Our net assets are without restrictions, our asset is $1,307,198 compared to $1,208,543, or up $98,655. With lower restrictions, $158,027 compared to $159,648, or that's down $16,021. So our total net assets, $1,465,225 compared to $1,368,191, for an increase of $97,020. Total liabilities and total assets again, $1,471,923 compared to $1,375,202. Ralph County Historical Society Handbook year 2024. And at this time, I'd like to also thank our Raleigh County Commissioners. Give our organization a tremendous amount. Thank you.
Thank you all. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Okay, second. Somebody second. There, your Mike's second. Wait, the motion. Eight, Dr. Vogt, in. All in favor, say aye. I'm going to move my stuff around a little bit and I choose to make an acknowledgement of our guests right now. We received a substantial gift from the estate of Dennis Wagner. Danny passed away about a year ago. He was a volunteer at the Historical Society for many years. Danny worked on the restoration of the popcorn wagon and also the restoration of the gas pumps in front of the Red Slot Motor Company in its building. Danny was a classic car owner, and restoring and lighting up the gas pumps in front of the old 1938 service station was a favorite project of his. We appreciate all his volunteering and all his gift will help us as we continue for a century. So now we have the chapter reports. And Tara could not be here, but she prepared a written report of the Wantaga Police Association. Is that, people have that, or? Okay, it's some of the bad. So people are interested in that, and we always appreciate our chapters. Wantaga House has a lot of good stuff going on. So stop there, and we also appreciate Sleepy Historical Society and Deb Wall, National, their president is here to present the chapter report. I don't like being up here. I feel like I should be running for office, and I'm not. Anyway.
As Randy said, I'm Deb Moldashel, and I'm president of the CBI Historical Society, and we're a chapter of the Brown County Society, and I'm a representative on the board, and the good news is I can't hold office. You didn't tell me that, right? Paul, I would like to compliment you. At our monthly meetings, can we have one of those one-page reports, please? We get like 5 pages, too much. We held our annual meeting last month, and this year we recognized the Sleepy Eye Women's Club as our honoree or guest speaker, kind of rolled into one. That club was established in 1888 and has been ongoing since. Their purpose is to do things for the community and also to educate themselves, their members, about things. So they've been a gracious donor to our museum and also really hands-on partners. And we need volunteers for something. That's who we ask first, and that's who comes. So they're great. They, so about 20 of their members attended our meeting, and 4 of them had prepared a PowerPoint presentation about the history of the club in Sleepy Eye, and I think it was fun for everybody that it was there, and we're all old people, and we like, oh yeah, I remember when they did that. It was a very good program.
Happy to serve.
Lori, stand up and wait. Lori Hoffman is our museum director. And this past season, our season is May through October. She had several tour groups, school children, senior citizens. We had firemen's wives, spouses, I should say. Any men show up? And we had a special visit last December when horse ride of the native youth. They were youth. It was not the Dakota, what is it, 25+2. It was not that group. They took the year off, and they may not be doing that again. But this was a group of young people. There were about 5 teens that rode horses from South Dakota. And on their way, they stopped in Sleepy Eye one afternoon, and we had cookies and a chocolate for them and chatted with them and got to see when they rode in. They do a ceremony, a circle ceremony, and that was really a fun day for us. In June, I went to the Kiesling House and watched Kathleen Backer make butter so that I could make butter at our museum. And we had an event for Dairy Month, and we had a pretty good turnout with kids that came and shook their jars of cream and made butter and put it on crackers, and it was a lot of fun. Probably be doing that again. We participated this year in Sleepy Eye's Party in the Park, and we are in the midst of putting together a new project that we borrowed from the Springfield Historical Society. They have a very successful event where different organizations and businesses come into the museum and decorate trees, and then people can come through and they vote on their favorite tree with money. And then that museum keeps playing. So we said, that's what we're gonna do. And they were very gracious to tell us how to do it. And so it's our first year, and we decided we're gonna do it no matter what. We gotta start somewhere, and we're looking forward to it. It will open on the Friday after Thanksgiving in the morning. I understand Santa Claus is coming. And then we're gonna be open Saturday mornings and Thursday late afternoon evenings up to December 20th. So if you want to come in and see our decorated museum and the pretty trees and bring money, then we'd be happy to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb, and good to have you here, Lori. So, it is time for the President's Report. What am I going to say? Let's see. So this is the last time you'll see me up here. My term on the board is ending. We have limits of 2 3-year terms. So next year I'll be sitting out at a table with some of you, so if you could make room for me or welcome me to the table, I appreciate that. My time on the board is ending, but I hope to find ways to stay involved. I think Amy's going to force me to. So that will take the shape of good old-fashioned volunteering. My connection to this organization, as some of you know, in that museum over there, are pretty strong. My wife Pam worked there for the Historical Society for 20 years. Back in the 90s, I did research for a couple of exhibits and projects we had. So children kind of grew up in the museum for a while. Then I served as the Sleepy Eye Historical Society rep, like Deb is, for a while before beginning my 2 terms. So I've been around a bunch, and I can't imagine staying too far away. As your program says, this is the 95th of these meetings. So I started thinking about what that was like 95 years ago. I asked Darla if she could find anything out about it, and of course she could. No, Darla was not at that meeting. But if you don't mind, it's a little bit of history. I'm going to share some of what we have from that. So, a group of mostly men met at the county courthouse on May 5th of 1930. So we go through the names that were there. Fred Johnson began the Historical Society, Johnson Park, as well with lots and lots of things involved. Carl Manderfield, August Hummel, Philip Leach, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, H.H. Walter, Arthur Henley, this is written in, it's a little hard to read, some of it, George Marty, F.H. Retzloff, another Marty, and I can't make up the name there, sorry, Darla could pick that up. L.G. Vogel, all of them all, William Brush, H.R. Hodges, and A.R. Nelson of Sleepy Eye, Mr. and Mrs. Carl Stone of Lake Hanscott. So there's our one representative women. John M. Johnson of Hanscott, Robert Runk, and John Mack of Milford met in the County Commissioner's Chamber in the courthouse Monday, May 5th at 8 o'clock p.m. to discuss the advisability of organizing the Brown County Historical Society. Fred Johnson was elected temporary chairman and L.G. Vogel temporary secretary. After reading several communications from the State Historical Society, giving an outline and the purpose of such an organization, and after the thoughtful and well-considered discussion at this session, it was by unanimous vote agreed to perfect such an organization. They created a committee led by Fred Johnson, and they would write up the Constitution and meet in the future. Now I see this thoughtful and well thought out and well considered discussion, which I would say is pretty much all of our board meetings still. So anyway, so here we are, 95 years later. I guess the idea that sprouted then has grown and remains vital and alive. I think about history a lot. I think that is common for us as we get older to do that. We certainly live a larger part of history, and it's natural to reflect on yourself and your family and how they fit in all those larger streams of history. Of course, it is among the responsibilities of the Historical Society to aid us in that understanding. So, in thinking about this, a quote came back to me that I looked up, and I'm not sure what it means, but William Faulkner said, quote, "The past is never dead, it's not even past. All of us labor in webs spun long before we were born, webs of heredity and environment, of desire, of consequence, of history and eternity." Right now, my friend and classmate and fellow board member Mike is saying, "Oh no, here we go, he's going to talk forever." But no, I'm going to let Faulkner have the last word. So that, now Amy's going to come up here with the executive director's report.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Amy Johnson, and I'm the director of Brown County Historical Society. And I just wanted to, can you believe it? 3 years. It will be 3 years that I've been here. So that's kind of interesting. But it's just talk a little bit about what we've been up to. So programs. In March, we had our program, Equality at the Ballot Box, both for women in Minnesota and the Northern Great Plains. In May, we hosted Homes by Design, presented by Lisa Besmer, on 3 homes in the architectural style of Carl Piers. We did 6 lunch and bite programs this year. We heard about the Rappahan Dam, the Brown County Sheriff's Office, beers, bars, and drugs stores, Funny Money and counterfeiting, the Iroquois Theater Fire in Chicago and its connection to the New Ulm Turners, and community bands of Brown County. Most lunch and bite programs and special programs are available on our website and YouTube, and we thank UCAT for that. The 2025 U.S. Dakota commemoration brought a varied and busy schedule. We had speakers on the Dakota War Trials and the Dakota internment at Fort Snelling. We had downtown walking tours, batteries at the Keys Lake House, and of course, there's always spending on Sunday with the Free Cemetery Tour. One Room Schoolhouse was at the fairgrounds, with both days reaching capacity. And then we also ran a Children's Heritage Shores Camp at the Keys Lake House, which was so popular that we actually had to add a second day. Some people asked, maybe we should reconsider the name of this program. It is called Shores Camp. I don't want to tell my child what I'm signing them up for. But since we have a capacity those days, Heritage Shores are more fun than regular shores. So for Halloween, we hosted a Halloween scavenger hunt at the museum, which brought in about 400 participants. So our senior living program, we served 10 different locations throughout the county seasonally. We had developed 2 new programs this year. One was disasters in Brown County, and the other one that's currently going is called The Tales of Crime and Corruption, Brown County's Dark Side in the 1930s. The research for these programs was completed by Carlin Bell. This program also continues to develop and is now being presented to CAST and has made an appearance at the New Ulm Library. And I think UCAT is beginning to record these programs too, which thanks again. Our book group is still meeting the first Wednesday of the month in the annex, so thank you to Jeannie Hinsman for facilitating that group. And the Keys Lake House was open 29 times for its regular season and again for New Ulm's downtown Oktoberfest. For Oktoberfest, we hosted a blacksmith, Keys Lake House, to come demonstrate on the grounds. Being that Frederick Kiesling was blacksmith, it's a perfect match. But now what were we doing? We will now begin decorating the museum as we annually do for the holiday open house. So join us on Friday, November 28th. Parade of Lights, day after Thanksgiving, from 10 to 8. We have free admission. We also have cookie and apple cider from 4 to 8. Lee Weber will be returning this year to play music during the 4 to 8 time, so thanks Lee for doing that. We look forward to having you back this year. And this will also be the opening of the holiday exhibit of the Benzo Village. It is an Benzo Village year. This year, this village is being curated by Kathleen Backer. So we thank Kathleen for stepping in to do that. And then the final event of the year will be a book signing for Nikki Weiser on her recently released book, Jews in Germantown. This is going to take place on Saturday, December 6th from 11 to 1 at the museum. Books are available for purchase at the museum store. Stop by on the 6th for an autograph with Nikki. Of note, most of you know this, but Nikki was last year's annual meeting speaker, and the subject was this book. So we definitely congratulate you on this completion. Again, all right, so fundraisers. We have two major fundraisers, the popcorn wagon and the book sale. The popcorn wagon had another great season and raised over $5,000 of sales and cash donations. Yes. So thank you, Coordinator Yvonne Weber and Lee, the volunteer team, and also to Pat Poppy, the mascot. Our book sale also had a very strong year with over $6,000 raised. So thank you to the organizers, coordinators, Alyssa Beeble, and Rhonda Olson. We appreciate you. Couldn't do it without you. So again, two largest fundraisers of the year, and they are volunteer run. And speaking of volunteers, in 2024, volunteers contributed over 2,800 hours to the Brown County Historical Society. And at a rate of $16 an hour, this donation of time and talent could be figured as contributing $44,800 to organizational support. So thank you to you guys all. And by the way, I'm thinking that in 2026, I may start figuring this at $17 an hour because cost of living, you guys don't. I want to thank the sponsors for their support this season, to the Marjorie F. Gislason Speaker Series, sponsored by Dan and Nancy Gislason for Equality in the Ballot Box in March, to the Peachell Family Foundation for their support of the Senior Living Speaker Series, and more. We might have to change the name as it keeps evolving. To Mary Henley and Lisa Bethmer of New Home Real Estate for sponsoring Homes by Design. To Artisan Distributing, Bank Midwest, Dwayne Pierre, Thrive and Financial, AMPI, Quick Trip, IV, Running, and Cashwise for their support of the popcorn wagon season. The Junior Pioneers of New Ulm vicinity for sponsoring the 2025 U.S. Dakota War Commemoration. And to Dr. Thomas and Mary Jo Fritchie for sponsoring the upcoming holiday open house in Menzel Village. Thank you. Okay, to the staff, I thank you for everything that you do and your support, flexibility, commitment, creativity, and thoughtfulness. The BCHS is very lucky to have you. To the board, I thank you for giving so generously of your time, information, and knowledge. You are the rock. Randy is the role. And your character of this board will be very, very missed. And you should keep texting me and calling me, because that always brightens my day. And I also plan on you and Mike are going to be posting trivia again next year for the volunteer appreciation event. So that was so good. All right. To the membership volunteers and patrons, again, this wouldn't be possible without you. We greatly appreciate your time and are fueled by your involvement, ideas, and energy. Garrett, thank you very much for being here today and speaking. It is an honor that you are here to share your story with us, and we greatly appreciate it. His book, Collapse, is available here tonight and at the museum store. It will be available to sign copies after the presentation. So, thank you very much for being here tonight for our 95th annual meeting, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Amy. Over the last 2 years, I think it's safe to say that among women in my life, she's the second most person that I talk to, and will be first. And so organizing meetings and whatever, we get to talk. If I haven't heard from Amy for a couple of days, I assume the worst. So we get in touch, and the part hasn't been worse. So I think we're nominating committee. Okay, great. Larry, Harbaugh? Board? Yes. Election of board members.
Thank you, Randy. As Randy indicated, the Brown County Historical Society board members are elected to board for 3-year terms, and they may serve 2 3-year terms. This year, we have 4 board positions that are pending. And in this particular case, we have 3 trustees or members that are completing their first 3-year term and have agreed to be nominated to a second 3-year term. And I would like them to stand as I call their name. Those trustees that are completing their first 3-year term and are going to be nominated for second 3-year term are Mike Schmidt from Sleepy Eye, Ron Safford from New Ulm, and me, Larry Harble from Lake Crystal. The 4th trustee position that is open is the position that our president, Randy Resnick, who is finishing up his second term. Thank you, Randy, for your service, and enjoyed immensely working with you for these 2 years. The individual that is being nominated to that position is Tom Pazell. Would you stand up, please? Tom Pazell was born and raised in Sleepy Eye and spent most of his adult life in Brown County. He graduated from St. Mary's High School in 1973. He worked for the Sleepy Eye Public Utilities as a boiler operator for many years. He also worked at Oak Hills Living Center as their environmental services director for 11 years. His career path then led to Christensen Farms, and he retired in 2020. Always hoping to volunteer at Fort Ridgely Interpretive Center in retirement, the COVID pandemic put an end to those plans. It seemed to put an end to a lot of things. He has had a fascination for Sleepy Eye and Brown County history and would appreciate the opportunity to work with the Brown County Historical Society as a board member. Thank you for agreeing to be a nominee.
Hey, I will point out that in Sleepy Eye we say household. It's like Christmas Eve in Sleepy Eye, once you reach Essig, change to Stukas Marsig. So household apparently turns into household. So are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the slate as presented by the nominating committee. Paul makes that motion. Is there a second? And Joanne makes a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, all opposed. Thank you. Now, we can adjourn the meeting for our speaker. I did want to point out that December 12th of 1980, I had a wedding dance here. Just struck me. I had dark hair. See what being president of the board does. Anyway, Garrett and Ebling, all know about the topic. All of us, Scott Winchell about this, all of us know exactly where we were when the event that Garrett will be talking about, and he was intimately involved with, fortunately, happened August 1st of 2007. The Interstate 35W bridge in Minneapolis collapsed beneath more, I'm just gonna let Garrett come up here and tell the story. So, and thank you once again for all coming, and appreciate all our members, all our volunteers. All those things really make all this possible. So, Garrett?
All right. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for allowing me to be here. I want to apologize for my voice. I'm on the back end of a cold, and as the week progressed, my voice kept changing like Peter Brady. And yesterday, I had this really low, like Barry White kind of baritone voice. And today, I sound like the love child of RFK Jr. and Marge Simpson. So, you have to just bear with me. I'll try to speak as close to the mic as I can so you can understand me. Well, my name is Garrett Ebling, and I'm going to talk about my experience on the Butterfly Bridge. I want to kind of look at this in sort of two perspectives, I guess I would call it. I'm history. I like history too, and I imagine most of you like history too, seeing as you're all here. And so I wanted to take a look at the bridge from a historical perspective and where its place fits in Minnesota history, and then also where it sits in sort of in the aspect of being a survivor of trauma. So a little bit about me. I am a Malone guy. I went to grade school here. I graduated from Malone Public here way back in 1993, and moved away for school, and then I came wandering back like a prodigal son a couple of years ago. So happy to be back here in Malone. I am married. My son is 14. Growing. I don't know, I mean, kids just grow so fast. I can't even believe it when I say it's 14 morning. My career is in journalism. I was a newspaper journalist for many, many years. I did everything from reporting to page design to editing newspapers as well. And then did a stint as a restaurant owner for my current role, which is communications managing for an international company, which I get to do remotely. So I get to live here in Malone and work with people from all around the world. And then, as you know, I am the author of the memoir Collapsed, and so we'll talk a little bit about that later. Honestly, I kind of already talked about the agenda. Basically, I will leave time for some Q&A afterward. So if you have a question while I'm speaking, jot it down in your head or on your phone, and when we get to the end, I'm happy to answer any questions. I figure if I'm up here talking about the bridge, there's no question that's off limits for you, so don't worry about asking a question. All right, so as I was putting this presentation together, I had to think about well, what makes an event historic? And it kind of came down to 3 criteria for me. The first was that to be a historic event, it has to have a major impact, right? It has to be kind of the top news headline, and has to affect a lot of people. The second criteria is that usually when something is a historic event, it initiates change. Usually something has happened, many times bad, and people after the fact come together and try to figure out what they can change so that in the case of a tragic event, it doesn't happen again. And then the third criteria was it has staying power, holds a long-term importance. Obviously, historic events can affect a lot of people. It could and maybe would likely change people's minds about something and impact their beliefs. And then, of course, if something is historic, it's usually something that's very unique, right? It's like that once in a lifetime sort of event. So, as I was thinking about that in what are these historic events that meet this criteria in Minnesota, I started to do some more digging. And so, the fun part of doing the presentation, putting this together for me is that I got to learn some things. And so I want to take a quick little run through chronologically of these events that I feel are historic in Minnesota. And then, I'm sorry, is this? I don't know if I should be this close or this close, but So I got to learn about some of these Minnesota events and maybe learn just a little bit too as I kind of walk through these. Then we can kind of see where the 35W bridge fits into that and why it resonates with us in such a way that it does. So the first one I quickly want to talk about was the Sandy Lake tragedy. This is one that I hadn't heard about. But back in 1850, so 8 years before Minnesota became a state, there was this concerted effort by the U.S. government to transfer Ojibwe that were living along the shores of Lake Superior, mostly in northern Wisconsin. They wanted them moved west. Basically, it was up until then, land that people didn't, that the settlers really weren't around, didn't want. But as more and more settlers came in, that land suddenly became valuable to them, and so they wanted to move these Ojibwe. Normally, they would do their annuity payments within Wisconsin. But this time, the government said, hey, we want you to meet us in Sandy Lake in Minnesota. The reason that the U.S. government wanted them to do that was they wanted to meet the Ojibwe there late in the fall, as late as possible, so that the Ojibwe, who, if you know the Ojibwe, they were canoe makers, they navigated the rivers in that by canoe. They wanted it to be late enough so that the lakes and rivers would freeze over so that the Ojibwe couldn't make their way back to their homeland when they decided that they would want to return. And so the U.S. government then delayed payments intentionally, kept delaying, so the Indians were then stuck in Sandy Lake. They finally did get their annuities, but they got not all of it, and a lot of the food that they received was spoiled. And so as a result, supplies being delayed, food being spoiled, and they're not big enough. 400 Ojibwe died from that. We move ahead about 12 years here. Not really going to cover the Dakota War. I'm assuming most of us have a good basic knowledge of the Dakota War because of its local impact. But again, here was something that happened where hundreds of settlers and thousands of Dakota died. It was just a historic event and its impact across the spectrum here in Minnesota, which then culminated with 1,600 Dakota being brought over to Fort Snelling and kept in harsh winter conditions outdoors, where many died, and then ultimately the 38 Dakota that were hanged in Mankato Christmas. So if we move ahead again, now some other these events are kind of happening every like 12 to 15 years. We get to the Big Mill explosion in Minneapolis, and if you've been downtown Minneapolis, you've seen the mill ruins. This was one, at the time, Minneapolis was like the largest flour producer in the world, and on May 2nd of that night, it was just after the workers' shifts, so the night shift would come in, and all it took was a spark with all of that flour dust in the air, blew the building, and I think it's like 5 other buildings surrounding, blew them to smithereens. Surprisingly, only 18 people died in that disaster, but as a result of that, some safety regulations were created. They did rebuild at a different site. They built another mill with safer equipment and safer procedures. And so when we talk about historic moments and initiating change, that was a prime example of that. We move ahead another 15 years, the Great Indian Fire happens. So before Minneapolis, we were like at that height of the flour production. Here in 1884, we're kind of at the height of the white pine logging production. And so from, just north of the Twin Cities all the way up into Canada, white pine everywhere. The value in those trees was in the trunks. And so when those trees were logged, all of the branches were just sort of left. They weren't valuable, right? The trunks were taken. And so you had all this dry wood debris laying around. that summer was particularly hot, particularly dry. And all it was a spark, right? And things started going up in flames. It was a very windy day that day on September 1st, scorched 400 square miles. It said that when the fire started, there was an inversion in the air where warm air was trapped in the cooler air. And it was creating these vortexes. And so you have these little fire tornadoes spinning around and growing and combining. And they said that the walls of these tornadoes were some 200 feet high and reached the temperatures of 1600 degrees. So like, hot enough to just melt railways, like you can see in the photo here. Ultimately, over 400 people were killed in that. The next thing, now we're moving forward 30-some years, so the Milford Mine disaster. So we've had the rise of the flower industry, we had the peak of the boom of the white pine industry. Now we're getting to the iron ore, right? And the iron ore industry is taking off here in Minnesota. The Milford Mine was an underground mine that went 200 feet deep. It was unfortunately next to a lake, and there was a cave-in in the mine, and that cave-in allowed the water from the lake to rush into the mine, where the mine is. So these miners are down 200 feet into the ground. The water ran into that mine so fast that within 15 to 20 minutes, the water had risen almost up to the entirety of the top of that mine, so almost 200 feet. And 41 miners died of that. And then, of course, as a result of that, there were changes in the mining industry to help protect workers. So that's 1924. We don't see another event of that historic proportion until the bridge collapse, where we have multiple deaths and injuries due, of a historic nature in one moment. And so when you think about the bridge collapse and where you were in that moment, everybody that I run into, if they're at least, I don't know, I always had to keep raising this number, 30 years old, can kind of tell me where they were, what was happening when they found out about the bridge collapse. And I really think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we hadn't seen anything like this in Minnesota since 1924, so that's a whole lifetime of people. So when the bridge collapse happened, we were thinking like, I remember people saying like, this doesn't happen here. And it does, but it just didn't happen for a very, very, very long time. So we'll talk about the bridge. I know I kind of was a little bit long-winded on all that history stuff, but I thought you guys would like it too. So the bridge collapse, if this had happened any other day, I wouldn't be here talking to you about this bridge collapse because I wouldn't have been on the bridge. This was one specific day where I was doing something that I wouldn't normally have been doing. At my job, we decided to have our summer picnic that day. And so rather than being in my office, we were out at Combs in St. Paul. And so I was coming home from that outing when the bridge collapsed. Now it was a pretty exciting time for me in my life. I had just gotten engaged that weekend before, so I was pretty excited. Well, I had just started my job 5 months before, so I had gone from journalism and into corporate communications, and so I was learning a new trade, meeting new people, was excited about the prospects of that. So between that and the engagement, I really felt like I was going in a positive trajectory when the bridge collapsed. Shortly before, now the bridge collapsed about 6 o'clock, almost right on the button. So before that happened, I was on the phone with my fiance. She was already up north. She'd gone up north. She'd grown grew up north, and she'd gone up there to look for places to get married. Like that weekend before when I said, "Hey, do you want to get married?" Like, wow, she had like this like 2,200 step plan for getting married. Really fast. And so yeah, she's already out. The second that she said it, I knew she was off getting implementing her plan. So she wasn't. So I got on the phone with her on the cell phone. I believe it was the flip phone at that time. And she was telling me about her day and where she had gone to look for reception places and whatnot. And so we were in this conversation, and I was not that familiar with the 35W bridge or that area. At the time, I lived over by Hopkins, so on the other side of the Twin Cities. And at that time that I was talking to my fiance, we were all around Roseville, in that area. And so I ended up having to like tell her like, hey, I can't continue talking to you because I can't concentrate on where I'm going. I'm not that familiar with where I'm at. And so I hung up the phone with her, and just as I hung up the phone with her, I saw a sign for the highway that I wanted to take to get home. And I was like, oh shoot, this is where I wanted to go. But then I saw another sign for 35W South, and I was like, oh, I'll just take 35W South. What's the difference? And so I got onto 35W South, and so it was, like I said, it was 6 o'clock when the bridge fell. As I'm approaching, so I'm going south on 35W, and I'm headed towards downtown. And everything's kind of normal. I mean, there's a lot of traffic. It's rush hour. I remember I had my window rolled down, and it was a really hot day. I remember it was super hot. We were out at the zoo. We did the scavenger hunt. It was just like unbearably hot. I remember sweating the whole time running around trying to find sites like scavenger hunt. And so I had my window rolled down. I had my music up. I think I had like an iPod. This is like how long ago was it? I think I had an iPod shuffle or something connected to my car, listening to my favorite tunes. And so I'm just, as traffic is getting to the point where stop and go, I'm just kind of sitting in the car. And so I'm approaching the bridge. Again, I'm not familiar with the area, so I'm not really understanding that I come to a bridge. And also, when you were on that bridge, there were like jersey barriers along the side, so you couldn't really see up and over the bridge. You just kind of felt like you were on a highway, even though the bridge was the bridge. And so while I was about to cross the bridge, I wasn't mentally thinking, oh, I'm about to cross the river. Well, things would stand still, and I get getting impatient, so I'm like, well, I'm gonna try and get to whatever the next exit is. I'm gonna try and get off the interstate, and I will wind my way through downtown, and then I think I can get to the other side of the cities, and then make my way back that way. So I was like, it may not take me, I may not get home any faster, but at least I'll be moving. I'm kind of one of those people, right? Like, as long as I'm moving. And so, unfortunately for me, the next exit was on the other side of the bridge, but that was my intention. So I got over to the far right lane. Now that was difficult because as I was trying to do that, the lanes were converging. There was construction on that bridge, if you remember. And so we were losing a lane. So everybody was, not just me trying to get to the right, but everybody else was trying to get to the right as well. So I managed to get to the right lane. It's right about at that point where something starts to happen. And I know as I talked to different people, different people have said they noticed different things first. Some people will say they heard the beam snap. They heard a lot of noise. Some people will say the first thing they noticed was wrong is they saw construction workers running on the bridge. For me, the first thing that told me something was not right was everybody's brake lights in front of me illuminated at the same time. I was in stop and go traffic, right? So it's all kind of like this, all the traffic lights. But all of a sudden there's like, and so whatever daydream I was in my car, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, like why is everybody hitting the brake lights at the same time? It's at that point then, about a second later, most of the cars that are in front of me, all of a sudden just dropped straight out of sight. Like literally, it was literally like a movie scene. Like you were watching, I don't know, Godzilla, Tokyo or whatever. Like all of the cars just disappeared. They just dropped. And it's something that's so strange that your brain doesn't process it right away. Like I don't know what I'm seeing. Like I just saw this, but that was cool acting. So I can't believe what I'm seeing. My brain can't process it. But I have a feeling, and inside of me, I have this very strange feeling of relief, and this feeling that I feel guilty about. But I just, the feeling that I feel is relief. I just saw something bad happen. Something bad happened to a bunch of people, but I'm not in that. I'm safe, and so all of a sudden I was like, oh, something really bad just happened that I just narrowly escaped. But what I didn't realize is that, no, I didn't quite escape it. In these pictures, this red car is my car, so the red car there. And if you look at the smaller photo, at the bottom right-hand corner where the bridge kind of comes up, my car fell right like over the edge of that. So basically the bridge was held up with two piers. So you can see where it ramps up, there's a pier there. And then there's a pier on the other side. So what I saw was that flat section that's in the middle of the river, that's what I saw fall in front of me. And the amazing thing about that section that fell was that those cars, they all fell together with the road and they just kind of like landed on the road. So I saw them fall. I then, about a second or two later, all of this plume of dust, debris comes shooting up into the sky. So that section had fallen down and kicked up all of this debris. And all of a sudden, vision was obscured, like it was like we're in the thick of the fog. So now I couldn't really see, but I could feel, and I could feel my car starting to tip forward. See, I was on that pier, so the section in front of this I'm on this section had dropped. Now this section was on the pier and it's falling like this. So my car is starting to nosedive. So I can't see anything. All I know is that I'm falling. And again, I don't know that there's a river underneath me. I just feel like I'm on the highway. So I'm falling, but I don't concept of I'm falling 100 feet. I kind of feel like I'm on a highway and maybe I'm falling just a little bit. But I do remember I had my arms locked on the steering wheel. I had my foot slammed straight on the brake. So I kind of was like having this like Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner moment where like I was going over the cliff, but I felt like I could stop my car in midair, I guess. And then that's it. I wake up in the hospital and there's bright lights, and there's all the sounds, and there's a nurse asking me my name, and then asking me what day it is. And the first question I remember being asked, what day is it, Garrett? And I knew that the bridge had collapsed on August 1st. And figuring out that I'm in a hospital, and I'm also figuring out that I'm maybe not in the best shape. And so, I guess I'm just went to my out, and I'm like, I don't know, August 2nd. And the nurse said it's August 19th. And so where did those 18 weeks go? That went my car out of the water. So what happened? How did I get from the middle of the river to the hospital, right? Well, I had help. When the bridge collapsed, there were many people that rushed to the accident site near the bridge collapse. Two people that aided me, one was a dental student at the University of Minnesota, who was moving into his apartment that day, right next to the bridge. The other person was really the primary person that saved me, rescued me. His name was Rick, and Rick was a Comcast subscriber, the guy that comes to your house and wants your cable when you move in. And so Rick was driving along the river road, and he saw the bridge collapse. Rick, I grew up along the shore of the Mississippi River in Wisconsin. So Rick grew up along the river. Rick understood the dangers of the river, how the currents work, all that. So when he got to that riverside at the site of the collapse, he knew that the people that were out there were in a perilous situation, but he also knew that anybody that would go out to try and help those people would be putting themselves in a dangerous situation. So Rick had to decide, who can I safely get to versus who can I not safely get to? And that meant life or death for some people. And I can't imagine what Rick was thinking when he had to go and make those decisions in a second or two as he stood there on that shore. Fortunately for me, I was one of the people that Rick felt that he could get to. And so Rick swam out to my car. My car had settled on so my car is actually sitting on some of the bridge debris right next to another car. You can see that white roof. I collided with that car midair, kind of bumped as we came down, and then went next to each other. This picture was taken before they dammed up the water upstream. So after the bridge collapsed, they dammed the water so the water level lowered so that the rescue workers could have a better opportunity to do their search and rescue. And then in those photos, so some photos you'll see my car actually sitting on debris, whereas this one you can't see that. So Rick was able to swim up to my car, and once he got there, I was conscious. I don't remember any of this, but he said I was conscious. I had blood all over my face. I had my leg dangling out of my driver's side window. But my seatbelt had jammed. So apparently I had tried to get my seatbelt off, but I couldn't do it. So Rick, getting out there and seeing that, swims back to his truck and gets some sort of cutting device. I don't know, yeah, like a utility knife or whatever, and swam back to my car. And about that time, the dental student had showed up. And so they cut my seatbelt, and then they asked me where I was from. And to me, when somebody asks you where you're from, I'm from Lowell. So I think they were trying to ask me, where do I live? Which would have been like Hopkins, but they're asking me where you're from, and I said Lowell. And it was funny, I guess a small town thing. And so then they pulled me through that open window, and then one of them laid on his back, like back float, and then they put the other person put me on top of that person. So they were like, became like my human raft. And then the other one guided us to the shore. And right at about the time we got to the shore, the first ambulance showed up. And I was put into that first ambulance and taken immediately to Hennepin County Medical Center. And within an hour of the bridge collapse, I was in surgery. And so that's the story of how I got to the hospital. And even to this day, I don't remember any of that residue. So when my car fell, it nosedived. And so when I fell, I went nose first into that debris that was below me, that roadway that was now debris. As you can see here, I hit it pretty hard. The doctors had said that it was the equivalent of driving 100 miles per hour into a brick wall. Unfortunately, because my car was nose diving, my face was right up against the dashboard because of the gravity. I was pushed forward. And so while my airbag went off, it didn't go off rapidly enough for it to have any sort of successful effects. And so when I hit my head, I literally snapped right into the dashboard of the steering wheel. I ended up, of all my injuries, which I'll tell you about, I ended up having 2 facial reconstructive surgeries because of that. Another doctor told me that, or a facial surgeon had told me that they rank everybody that they do facial reconstruction surgeries on a scale of like 1 to 10, based on the severity of their injuries. That surgeon told me that the average score of somebody on that scale is roughly between 3 and 4. He said that if they would have given me a score, he said my score would have probably been a 13. And I was like, what? And he's like, the reason the score is 3 or 4 is because anything higher than that, people don't survive. They don't get scores. And so yeah, all the bones in my face, they said when they went in for the surgery, it was like potato flakes. Really wasn't anything they could do with them. And, my mom had to bring in a photo of me for them to use, so that they could recreate what I looked like. Now my mom gets People magazine. She's gotten that magazine for years, so I know she's got hundreds of photos of Brad Pitt. I don't know why she wouldn't. She's very fancy. She gave them a photo of me, so they did their best. I will hold that against her though, for the rest of her life. So I ended up having 6 surgeries in about 2.5 weeks. So that whole time that I was out, when I woke up and it was August 19th, they had me kept me sedated medically, and so I had all the surgery when I was out. I was in the hospital in total about 2 months. That was the second longest of anybody that was on the bridge. The person that was in the hospital the longest, she was in the hospital for 4 months. And I did interview her for my memoir, so her story's in my book as well. There's a picture of the inside of my face. You can see I had a couple of screws, still have a couple of screws in my chin. And then up above my teeth there, you can see that's all metal work. So anything that was like, that they could use for my own, they had to recreate with metal. And so I'm sort of this like ass cyborg. The crazy thing though is that like I don't set anything off in the airport. Like they gave me a card like to keep, but I never had a problem with it. So But here's the list of my injuries. The thing that got me into the hospital and the operating room within an hour was the severed colon. So I had internal bleeding going on, and so they had to go in and fix my colon. So I ended up losing like 3 feet of colon. Of course, I had the traumatic brain injury. I shattered my left forearm, so I've got titanium rods in here. I shattered my left ankle, and so I've got some hardware in there. I also broke my right ankle. Of course, I had several teeth ended up missing, and I broke my jaw. So when I woke up in the hospital, I had my jaw wired shut. Shattered facial braids. I broke a vertebrae in my back, which I didn't even find out about until I went through my records, like months and months after my medical reports. There were just so many things that they had that were higher priority to fix that the broken fracture vertebrae was being mentionable. And then I injured my the optic nerve in my right eye, so I had double vision in my eye for a while, and then collapsed the lung. So lots of things. I was so beat up that my mom said that when she had finally got to the hospital, after she had found out where I was, that the only way she could identify me in the intensive care room was by my feet. They had everybody, lined up on beds. I wasn't recognizable by my face. It was my feet. I guess moms don't know if their kids' feet look like. This doesn't know moms. But yeah, that's man. There's a less happier me in my mom. Time. I ended up going to a few different hospitals. I landed at HCMC, and I was there for about 3 to 4 weeks. I couldn't stay there because I couldn't start therapy, and they needed my med for somebody else. So they moved me to another hospital in St. Louis Park where I could just lay around. Basically, I needed to, in order for me to start physical therapy, I had to have 2 workable limbs that I only had. The only thing that wasn't injured was my right arm. And of course, I'm left-handed, so I had to wait for that I had a simple fracture in my right ankle. I had to wait for that so I could put weight on it to be able to go back to HCMC to do therapy. So I ended up. So that's where the 2 months came in. So then the final week or 2, I went back to HCMC and went through their NAM rehabilitation program. I had to be able to prove that I could live on my own. And I had to start from scratch. I mean, I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to chew food. I had to show that I had enough stamina to warm up soup on a stovetop, that I could get in and out of a car. All of those things I had to relearn how to do. When you're that beat up, you're just like, you have one, just to get up and go to the bathroom, you're completely wiped out. So it was a long transition. Once I was able to, of course, with rehab, they would show as fast as possible, faster than you want to be. I mean, I had a foot-long incision in my stomach from the colon surgery, and they were like, the next day, like, you're getting up, you're gonna go walk, and I was like, oh, crap. But I was determined, like, I really was determined to get everything back, and I can remember just being as I was in bed, being like, I just really want everything back that this bridge is taken away from me. So I did if they told me to go walk 20 feet, I would go walk 30 feet. Or, if they told me to do some exercise 20 times, I would do it 40 times. Like, I was just that determined. I wanted to get back on that upward trajectory that I felt like I was on before the bridge collapsed. And then finally it was, right before I got to go home permanently, there was this, I got to get a day pass. Like that's like the whole time I was in the hospital and laying in bed. Like all I could think about was like, I want to get this day pass. I want to get back home. And so finally the day came and I got this day pass. I remember we all got loaded into the car and it was late September. And we got back to the apartment and I remember thinking before I got there, like once I get there, I'm just gonna feel like my old self. And that was really the moment that when I got there, and I remember sitting on the couch and I tried to pick up my guitar and I couldn't even like hold the guitar to play a note. All of a sudden that was like the aha moment to me that like, I got a really, really, really long way to go. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to get back to where I was before. And so what started out as like this really optimistic day for me really kind of became this bummer day for me. In fact, I remember asking him to go back to the hospital early that day. I was like, okay, send me back. But I did get, well, this was about a couple days later, and then they sent me home for good. And of course, there were a lot of follow-ups on physical therapy. And then finally, I had to get braces as an adult. And I remember fighting tooth and nail about that because I had gone through all these surgeries, all of this therapy, and I was like, I just want to be done. And my mom convinced me, saying, no, you're not want to have goofy teeth. I don't want to have straight people. I've never had braces when I was a kid, so I was like, I thought like I had like dodged a bullet as a kid. And then here you caught it with me, so I had braces. So, physical recovery to me was hard and easy. It was easy in the sense that it was very procedural and prescribed. And the doctors would tell me, if I did this, by this day I would be here. And if I did this, it would continue on. And it would happen, it worked like that. Like if I did what they said, I would start walking or I could move. And plus I was really motivated. And in fact, I wanted to get back to work fast. And the doctors were like, there's no hurry for you to really get back to work. And I was like, no, I really want to get back to work. And so I went back and started going back to work part-time in November of that year. So there was last August, so in November I started going back to work. The doctors were like, we'll write you a slip, you don't have to go back to May. And I was like, I really regret that, but I was like, no, I really need to get back. I gotta get back to improving myself. And I want everything that I had before. So as I was making these physical advancements, I misinterpreted that I would also start feeling better emotionally in step with my physical achievements. So as I would, I'll be like, once I move from the wheelchair to the scooter, then I'm gonna feel better inside, like I'll feel good. And then if I get that step, that milestone, I'd be like, man, I really feel better. And they'd be like, but I bet once I'm able to walk again, then I'm gonna start feeling good inside. And again, it wouldn't happen. And it just kind of kept going. So finally, it got to Christmas and my fiance's like, you're really kind of a jerk. And if you don't go get some help, I'm not quite sure we're going to be able to get married. And so, what was I going through? Even though physically I was on my way back, inside I was really struggling. I was feeling, I guess the one word I can say is stuck. Like I really felt frozen and numb. And it felt like everybody else in the world, their lives were moving 1,000 miles a minute, and I wasn't moving at all. And that got to be very frustrating to me. I also found that I was real stampy, and it would seem to come up when I would have instances where I didn't feel like I had control of the situation. chasing it back to the bridge, right? Like here was a traumatic event where I had no control over what was happening to me. And so that ended up like translating or transferring to anything. It could be like, maybe I had plans for Saturday and my fiance would be like, oh, hey, my parents invited us over for dinner on Saturday night. And I'd be like I would just explode. And then because here was all of a sudden I lost control of this like stupid, silly thing that like I shouldn't even be getting upset about. But it would happen. And when it happened, I would just sort of be like this grumpy person the rest of the day. Like it was just and so then I ended up going to counseling. What they diagnosed me as is they called it adjustment disorder. Basically, in a nutshell, it's PTSD minus flashbacks. So all the junk with it, but I just didn't have the vivid memories from the collapse. In fact, to this day, I never had a dream about the bridge collapsing. It's just never happened. But yet all that other punk that comes with complicity, I felt. So while I was in therapy, the counselor said, well, here's the deal. We're gonna do some therapy. We did some called EMDR. I didn't hear familiar with that, but it's EMDR therapy. She said, if you do this for 6 months, you'll be good. And so I felt like, okay, well, if I go do this counseling for 6 months, then it'll be fixed. So I I used that old, physical healing thing, right? I was like, oh, it's just like that. I just do the thing, and then I get the result. And so I would say that back at it, I didn't really give it as much serious attention as I really should have. So I kind of went through the motions, but also other things were happening in my life. I got married, and so that happened, and then it was among many things, it was also a distraction. So when you're getting married and you're planning all that out, those are distractions. So that was giving me sort of like an artificial high, and I felt like I was starting to move forward again. My wife gets pregnant, I have a baby. Again, it's like a distraction. It's something that's a mood lifter or keeps me distracted from my real issues. I ended up starting my own business, as I said before. I owned a restaurant, and so rather than dealing with the issues, I would go and work 14, 16 hours a day at the restaurant. I could avoid my wife. I could avoid whatever problems or whatever triggers were going to happen that would be negatively affecting the relationship. Well, that's my son. He now wears my clothes. So I'm filling my life with distractions and watching my marriage crumble. It is at the point where we just can't. It doesn't work anymore. We end up getting divorced. And so I looked at it as a fresh opportunity. And I'm like, well, the marriage just didn't work. It's not me, it's the marriage. And so I'll look at this as a fresh opportunity. I ended up starting dating somebody, ended up getting engaged. But again, these problems that were happening in the marriage, I'm seeing these things start to recycle again in this relationship, and that relationship ultimately fails. And so I kind of get to this point. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying, okay, obviously it's me, right? These relationships aren't working. I kind of bounced from career to career, and I still feel like I feel like I'm losing. So I finally said to myself, what am I not willing to lose? Where do I draw the line? What am I not willing to lose? And it really was my son. I could start to see me distancing myself from my son in my relationship because I didn't want him to see the ugly me. It's just like I didn't want my ex-wife to see the ugly me or my ex-fiancé to see the ugly me. So there's a lot of times where I would just completely physically separate myself from people just because I didn't want to set off a trigger and cause the erosion. And that's really what it was. Every trigger was leading to an erosion. And so that's when I said get serious about getting help and went back to a different therapist. Really went at it hard and also really got into mindfulness. I don't know if how familiar you may be with mindfulness, not that, but mindfulness was something that really helped me out. So I started really digging into that, and I ran into this dude. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ham. He was a Vietnamese monk, and he lived in Vietnam back in the Viet Cong. I was there, and the communism was there, and he ended up being kicked out of his country, and he went to France. And so here was a man who believed in peace and freedom, and was forced to be separated from his family, from his friends. To me, that's pretty traumatic. And I look at it as like he could have gone two directions. He could have been defeated by it, or not. And he decided to turn it into something. And so he went and he built all of these religious centers, retreats centers for people to come and learn about mindfulness, being involved in the civic projects and whatnot. And he wrote 130 books, all about peace, mindfulness, finding sort of that inner peace. And so, I've written one book. I can't imagine writing 130 books. It just blows my mind that this man wrote 130 books. But one of the passages that he wrote, it's called Washing the Dishes. And it's always something that's kind of like, it really stuck with me. And you can read that up there on the screen. But really what he's saying is that oftentimes when we think of washing the dishes, it's a chore that we just need to get done. It's something that's in the way for us to go do something that we might actually want to do, versus the chore of washing the dishes. But when he and the other monks wash the dishes, they do it as an experience. And instead of it being a rush job to get to something else, they're really washing the dishes with mindfulness. It's the temperature of the water, it's the soapy film of the water, it's the texture of the coffee cup in the hand. It's all of that. And so as he is mindful about that, it sort of opens up a world for him. And once he's practiced that enough, he's able to expand that to all the other areas of his day. And imagine how vibrant your day can become if you're doing it with everything, right? Like, I think back about my day to day, and I think about how much of it was just a rush to get from point A to point B, and a blur, and I didn't really stop to think about that. And so, all those things, and so that really meant something to me. And it's something that I'm terrible at, but something that I'm always trying to think about and get better at, because it's such a great grounding exercise, and really kind of help open ourselves up to ourselves. And so I use mindfulness as an exercise as part of my journey to mental health and wellness. Another thing that I did was something that really helped me put things together is I'm really a context guy. Like, I need context to help me make sense of things. And if I don't have context, then I struggle. And dealing with this whole mental health thing, post-trauma, was really had no context for me. You know, it's kind of like the accident happened in a nanosecond, and then all of a sudden I'm thrust into this world that I can't make sense of, and I don't understand what's going on inside of me, what's wrong with me, and why is everything falling apart. I really didn't have any context to it, to the path or the direction that I needed to get better. And so one of the things that I've been working on is that as I put together this pyramid, I call it the moon pyramid, makes sense in a second, but it's really based off of I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a triangle, and basically it's you have to complete each level to get to the very top level, which is self-actualization. Basically, it's like first thing you need is like air and food and water. Right? You can't be anything else if you don't have those three things. Once you have those things, then you can move to the next layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is I believe it's safety, physical, psychological safety. So it's built off like that. So I took that concept and I turned it into a pyramid for mental health. And really it's about 3 layers, the understand, the manage, and the master layer. What I discovered for myself is that if I didn't understand trauma, I wasn't going to be able to defeat it. There's just no way. In fact, there were a lot of things that I tried to do other than understand it to beat it. Like I could completely ignore the fact that I was acting or feeling the way that I was feeling. That was one thing I could do. It was somebody else's fault. I could blame others. That was another thing that I could try to do to try to like will myself to be better, and on and on. But if I didn't really truly take the time to understand what the trauma was and how it was affecting me, I wasn't going to go anywhere. Once I was able to do that, and that brought me up to the managed stage, and I was able to start managing my triggers, being able to understand what situations were likely going to trigger me, so that I could stop myself before I, said something or did something that was going to erode the relationship. And so that managed part really become really what habit building. And then once you get to be really good at that, then there's that master phase where you kind of sort of get back to your own self. I'm in the managed phase. I'm probably in the lower part of the managed phase of that triangle. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the master phase, but at least when I put my journey in this context, it allows me to better understand where I'm at and to give a direction for where I'm going. So to wrap up here, thank you for your patience as I kind of just talk. This is a drawing of the 35W Bridge Memorial. I don't know if anybody has ever been up there. It's right next to Old Meadow Park in Minneapolis. All of the names of the survivors are on that wall there with the quote, and then the 13 pillars of the 13 people who died during the bridge collapse. And then that quote there is what's shown on the face of that wall. I think that quote really kind of sticks with me. I know that I'm like never going to be healed in the sense that I originally sought out to be, not physically or mentally. Back at the beginning, I was like, man, my goal is to like put Humpty back together again and go back to normal. But when Humpty breaks, he can't be as good as new again, right? And it took me a long time for me to realize that the former me was was that, right? It was the old me. And, but I had to kind of accept this new version of me, and one that is constantly trying to evolve and learn from my journey. I guess what I've gained, like in school, people might say like, "Oh, would you ever go through that again?" And like, or like what, or like, was it worth like what you learned going through it? And I said, you know, I don't know if I would want to go through what I went through again. Like, there was a lot of pain, but I did come away with a lot. Like, I learned some perspective, definitely learned mindfulness, and it gave me a path of purpose. And I didn't have those things before, and I don't think that I would want to trade them away. Finally, I do have a website. I try to share my story with other people, and I also try to share in a really honest way what my feelings are. So on this website, I have a blog page. So I've got, over the years, dozens and dozens of blog postings from where I was at different parts of my journey. There's blog posts where I'm not feeling the best. There's blog posts from where life was crumbling. There's blog posts from when I had the light bulb went off, or I had some insight. So I encourage people to go to the website if you want to read some of those blog posts. I also have done several podcasts. I've interviewed people that have gone through different traumas in their lives and are willing to sit down and talk to me. So if you would like to listen to some of the podcasts, I have those on there as well. You know, again, for me, it's my purpose, I really feel like, is if I can help somebody who's struggling in their own trauma journey, help them take whatever that next step is for them, wherever they are on their journey, and I feel like I'm living my purpose. And so this website, I think, kind of helps me do that. So, anyways, that's the story. I appreciate you coming tonight and listening to me. As they said, I do have some books here if you are interested in the book. The memoir that I wrote it was published in 2012. So it's kind of a snapshot of history 5 years after the bridge collapse. I did also include the survivor stories of at least a half a dozen other people that I folded their stories into my story. Because, well, as a former journalist, I was like, wow, I really wanted to know, like, was their experience like mine, or was their experience different than mine, or was it a mix of both? And so I went out and kind of put up a journalstat and interviewed folks to see what their experience was like. And it was really interesting to me to talk to these people and see where they were on their mental health journey. Like, some people, I was surprised at how quickly they were able to kind of get back on their feet mentally. And then there's some people that I talked to that were like, I still felt like it was the day after the bridge collapsed for them in a mental health sense. So we're all on different journeys, and those are books. So yeah, thank you. I'm not supposed to wrap this up. Yeah, I feel like I should not be the last speaker.
Yeah, it's starting to collapse, right? A little wobble here. Is there any questions? Otherwise, here it's going to be around here. Yeah, in here.
I was just wondering, was your mental health addressed in your initial hospital stay, or was that kind of a surprise? Was your mental health addressed to your initial from the hospital stay or from treatment you were allowed?
Yeah, was my mental health discussed in my initial hospital stay? Not really. It was more based on physical and cognitive. I mean, I had to take a cognitive test before I could leave the hospital, so, that I had to do. There wasn't really much, done mentally. We did, and I didn't talk about it at all, but the bridge survivors had a support group. We were put in contact with a group that primary responsibility was they worked with families of homicide victims in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they were asked to create a support group for the bridge survivors, for the bridge survivors, and so through them we were able to get some resources. But yeah, I remember when I went to when I was able to go to my first meeting with that group, I was late to the game because I was in the hospital the second longest, so a lot of people had been there already. I remember rolling up in there in my wheelchair, and this one guy, he was just so angry. And at that point, I couldn't understand why he was so angry. So at that point, I was still just thankful that I didn't die. But again, everybody's feeling valid and validated. But again, it was just like, it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, this is affecting everybody in such a way.
I think that you know, but did you drive operative?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, early on, it took some time. Like, I didn't drive across to the new 35W bridge for a long time. Not because I didn't feel like I could comfortably, but I felt like I did, out of respect for the people that died, like I was like, well, I don't need to cross it, and there's other bridges. I ended up crossing it by accident, because I thought there was another exit, and there wasn't. And I was like, well, you can't really back up. So, but I do remember early on, like, not so much bridges, but like overpasses. I remember being on an overpass, and there was a stoplight at the end of it, and there was a dump truck next to me, and it was causing the idling was causing the bridge to shake. And I remember being like, you know, at that point, you're like talking to yourself, like, okay, the odds of being in 2 bridge collapses within 3 months is it's really low. So I tried to use statistics. Question?
Thank you, Garrett. I'm reminded that each of us had a story, not maybe quite as dramatic as that. In history, what we do here is collecting those stories, so I encourage you to share yours with family, write some down maybe sometime. Anyway, thank you, that was inspiring for sure. More than that. Thank you all for coming. We love our members. We love our volunteers. Stop at the museum. We got stuff coming up here day after Thanksgiving, and Vicky's book reveal. That's December 6th, I think. So, and you're always welcome to stop on by and see what we got in the exhibits. And the Mansell Village is there. So, all right. God bless you all, and a safe ride home. Amen.